Hello, thank you for joining us today. This is going to be an exciting walk through Barcelona, Spain. It's Angie Rice with Boutique Travel Advisors, and I'm here with one of our favorite guides in all of Europe, actually, but she happens to be very knowledgeable in the region of Barcelona from the standpoint of taking you on a private experience throughout the city, as well as on day trips outside of Barcelona. Florenza, it's so great to see you.
Hello, thank you so much for the invitation. It is a pleasure to be here and to be able to share my knowledge and my passion for my city, but as well for my job. I'm one of the blessed persons to say that I have a job which doesn't make me feel like I'm working because I'm extremely passionate about it. And it is a pleasure to collaborate with you as well, Angie.
Yes, I've enjoyed over the years getting to know Florenza, and she's given amazing experiences to our travelers. And Florenza actually was able to guide my parents when they stayed in Barcelona, and they just raved about the experience with Florenza. She knew exactly the types of fooderies and eateries that would appeal to my parents. I think they went to a flamingo dance. And they loved their day trip where they got to see the mountains, the wineries, as well as the boys' choir.
Exactly. We are going to talk about it today during the presentation, but definitely your parents were adorable. My type of client, I focus on private tours, so this gives me the opportunity to adapt to every type of client and to establish a connection as well. So it's easy to hit the spot, to take them to the right places, to offer them whatever it's in their interest, if that's architecture, if that's history, if that's a visit outside of the city to nature as well. So thank you for trusting me with your parents, and the experience for me as well, it was incredible. And another advantage this job has is the fact that you create relations and connections which last over the years, and you never know when you're going to repeat them.
You're exactly right, Florenza. I feel like one of the most amazing experiences that I have in my profession and being a travel advisor owner is the relationships and the connections with the team members that we establish around the world. Especially throughout the pandemic, we've been really supportive and connected and have stayed in touch. And you really do start to create friendships. And most of the time we connect over email, but our personalities are known to each other, and it's a lot of fun. And it allows us to better curate experiences for our clients. I know you did a big multi-gen tour for a family that was cruising and spending their time in France, Italy, and Spain, and they were a different tour guide in every city. And of course, Florenza, they raved about you. The kids enjoyed you. The grandparents enjoyed you. And it's so important that you adapt an experience that you can provide and you curate it based on the travelers. And obviously, if you're traveling with other adults, the experience is going to need to be handled differently than when you have young kids or maybe someone who has a mobility issue. And it's so important to identify those concerns because it eliminates the stress when people are traveling on a tour. And as we both know, when you're traveling in Europe, getting from point A to point B, you might have cobblestone steps, you might have to deal with traffic, and you have to really be accommodating to the guest and know how best to create that tour for them. And you're just so fantastic. And I'm so excited for us to really dive in and start to talk about the diversity of Barcelona. So let's show some visuals.
Excellent. So as I've mentioned, the type of business we're in, it's focused only on private tours. And as you said, Angie, it is extremely important to know what to expect from your group. And the better you know them, the better you know how to prepare the tour and how to prepare the shortcuts or the best way to adapt to it. So definitely you will find that in Barcelona. And
exactly right. I mean, Barcelona offers everything because for those that really like the nightlife and the entertainment and the fun, it's there. If it's someone who really wants to be on a tour that's more studious and more focused on the architect and the history of Barcelona, you can certainly emphasize all of those things. Or you can do what's very nice is kind of a mix of both. So if the kids are distracted when you're touring Sagrada, you can have a moment where you really focus on the history with moms and dads and the adults.
I have the feeling that you could do this easily, as good as I am, because you know all of the insights, and I'm sure this is essential for your clients. So definitely, Barcelona has something to offer for every age, for every category, nightlife, day life, and we're going to talk about the fact that we have the beach of the Mediterranean Sea and other privileges, which I'm going to mention in a second, but going to our next information, I would like to talk a little bit about Catalonia, because once you visit Barcelona, it becomes clear that you won't hear many people referring at Spain. You will hear them Catalonia. So Catalonia is one of the 17 autonomous communities of Spain. So if you look at this map that I have in here, you will notice that we have white borders, right? So each segment, it represents a community in Spain, a community where it can have its own personality, its own culture, its own food, its own language even. So, for example, if you go to south of Spain, where we had the Moors until the 15th century, you will see more Moorish architecture. Definitely the food there will be more spicy and more influenced by that culture. Whereas if you travel up north, you will definitely find the Basque Country with their own language as well, which is not a dialect. Those are the things I would like to mention. It's a proper different language.
It's a fascinating language, Florenta. I studied abroad in Spain, and initially I thought, where am I going to go? Am I going to study in Madrid? Am I going to study in Sevilla, Barcelona? And somehow I magically found San Sebastian and chose to study there. And it is the Basque region is truly a very unique culture. And I think it's one of the oldest living Cro-Magnon cultures in the world. And it's fascinating. The language is entirely different. It's a language that is, it's lost its written sort of presence simply because there's just not enough people who can write in Basque. So there's not a lot of books. But it's such a fascinating region to study. And San Sebastian, of course, is so beautiful. And if you're going to Barcelona, I would highly recommend trying to squeeze in, 2 or 3 days to spend some time in San Sebastian as well.
So this is the great vantage point in Barcelona. You could put your base there, or you could visit Barcelona, and you could easily take 1 or 2 day trip to San Sebastian, or even to Madrid. You're away 3 hours train ride from Madrid, right? So as well 5 hours to the south of Spain, where the landscape will change totally, the culture would change, but you would be in the same country. And as we talked in the last few days, you could take a train and head to Paris from Barcelona. You will be in Paris in 6 hours. How amazing is that? And indeed, the Basque Country is incredible, so unique. They are doing their best to keep their language, to keep their legacy. And exactly the same thing happens in Catalonia, because even in Catalonia as well, we have a different a language, which is called Catalan, which evolved in the same time as Spanish itself, Castellano, from the Roman language, from Latin. So when you will visit Barcelona and when you will visit Catalonia, you will see that everywhere on the menus. You will see a different language. You will see people being bilingual. They grow up in both languages, learning both languages at the same time. So those small cultural differences, I think, is the charm of Europe, after all, because you will find this in Europe in so many places. And this difference between Catalonia and Spain, for example, is due to the fact that Catalonia was an independent kingdom back until the 15th century, when a wedding of Ferdinand, King of Catalonia and Aragon, married Isabella, Queen of Castilla, and it was an alliance between two big kingdoms to support each other. So it's fascinating to know that, and when you visit it, you get a tour guide, a private tour guide, you will get all of the little insights to this type of details. But let me go back a little to Barcelona as well to mention how we have 1.6 million people in this living in the city, but the thing that everybody is satisfied with is the 300 sunny days a year. So beside the fact that we have the coast and the Mediterranean, we have 300 sunny days a year. How lucky are we? So you could easily combine this trip to Barcelona with a beach holiday, not only city or day trips. Or in the morning, you can visit the city, and in the evening, you can just relax by the beach with a sangria.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize the beautiful beaches along the coastline, and it really truly can be a great opportunity to combine city touring with the days at the beach.
100%. It's a privilege. Again, I live here and I consider myself very lucky, but in the same time, the clients, when they come, they enjoy this ability, at least to take a walk on the beach, not necessarily to spend their days there. And many of my clients and many of people visiting Barcelona, they are combining as well cruising with the stay in the city. So today Barcelona is the biggest cruise port in Europe. So many of them, especially from the United States, use this as a base, or they take 2 days before their cruise or a few days after the cruise just to relax and to explore the city. And that is how maybe a person ends up visiting Barcelona 6 times, but they haven't seen all of it.
Right, I agree. And a lot of times when people are planning their European trips, and I agree, there's that favoritism for those that are cruising because it is such a popular cruise destination, but I don't think people realize just how accessible it is, especially with the fast trains from Paris, or if you're to fly in and experience the French Riviera. I mean, the borders between Spain and France really allows you to experience both countries very easily.
You just drive through. It is fascinating, you know, in Europe to have this 2 hours of driving, you get to speak French, and then a few more long hours and you get to speak Italian. That for us is fascinating. And that's why many people in Europe, they speak several languages because of the proximity and this interaction.
Yes, I agree. I think the languages are so fascinating, how quickly, especially when you're exposed to these languages at such an early age. I know when I was learning Spanish much later in life, I mean, I was in high school, but then immersing myself in college when I was studying abroad, it was much more challenging than those kids. So I went to a program where it was primarily European study abroad students versus Americans. So there were classmates from Sweden, which we called them, they were referred to as Suecos, and a lot of students from Germany. And so they just picked up the Spanish so much faster because it was their 3rd or 4th or sometimes even 5th language. So that exposure to the languages is so fascinating. But you're right, there's commonalities between the languages, but truly when we would cross the border to go to Biarritz, because it's also very beautiful in Biarritz from San Sebastian, the food instantly was different. The restaurant experiences were different. Just, you know, you're walking the streets and just the dress and attire and the culture. I mean, you see these shifts, which makes touring a country so fascinating. I think it's so easy, especially if it's your first trip to Europe, to say, oh, I want to go to 3 countries. I want to go to France, I want to go to Spain, and I go to Italy. And I love when you can sit down with the traveler and really emphasize the difference between focusing on one country, perhaps, and maybe you fly into, you know, a city like London, visit for a day or 2, and then spend, you know, 10 days to 2 weeks in Spain and really explore Spain. And maybe, you know, you spend some time in Portugal, because that really allows you to see the diversity of one country.
Definitely, if the time allows you to. There are several types of travelers, right? The ones which like to focus on one country and just dedicate their entire week on visiting Spain, for example. And as I've mentioned earlier, there is a huge diversity, even in Spain itself, not crossing the border. There's no need, because if you would travel the entire Spain, you will find differences. But then it's fascinating when you travel to Portugal and to the Atlantic Ocean and you see the differences, and then you move into France, which France as well, the Biarritz, which is as well on the bay, it's different compared to north of France. It's extremely different. So if you can and you have the time, traveling in several countries and noticing these little differences will make a difference of a lifetime.
You're right. And I think that's where cruising can be appealing, because you can cruise and really get to see the different port towns of a country. And then you can say, okay, now that I've been there and got, a day dose, which is clearly not enough time, I've gotten to kind of see, is that a place where I'd want to revisit and spend 4 to 5 days, so I can really immerse myself in the town, the city, the food, the culture. I think those 1 days, it's really just a great opportunity to say, okay, is this a place that really inspires me, and would I be able to come back? Is this a place I want to revisit? Because the world is so big. So being able to visit places, once, twice, 3 times, I mean, that's a luxury by all means, to be able to be afforded that time and be able to make that happen in your lifetime. So I agree. I'm like, cruising is a great way to maybe get a glimpse of an experience and then decide whether that's something you want to experience for a land destination at a future time.
I totally agree with you. It's a great point of view, and especially if at that those days you said, you hire a private tour guide, which will take you straight to the most interesting things. You will accomplish in 1 day what you would accomplish on your own maybe in 1 or 2 weeks.
So true. I mean, that's the thing. People get off the port, they don't even know what direction to go. And it's easily to get caught up into the crowds, thinking where the crowds are going is where you want to go. And that's so false, because what you really want to be able to do is plan your day in advance, knowing what the interests are, allow for flexibility, which a tour guide is able to kind of control. If you want to stay someplace for a longer period of time, then plan, because that can easily happen. You don't want to be so over-consumed by getting from point A to B to C to D. But you're right, a tour guide is going to be able to pre-arrange. They know the cities and the destinations so well that from a logistical perspective, they'll be able to get you around the city to experience so much more. And really that, to me, when you're with a tour guide, it really does connect you to the locals, because your tour guide is local and they are going to allow you to sort of go where the locals tend to travel, or to travel more like a local. So if it's dropping in and getting, a croissant and a coffee, instead of looking for, you may see a Starbucks, not to say that they're on every corner in Barcelona, but not knowing where these hidden gems are, and you're wanting that coffee, you might end up at the Starbucks, but that's not really where you want to have your coffee when you're in Barcelona. And same goes for a cocktail or the dinner reservations. I know, Florenta, when you and I discussed the palates of my clients and what they like to drink and the nightlife that they want, do they want quiet romance, or do they want a busy? I mean, we really take time to make the right recommendations for the right people.
And that is essential. I will go through this on the next slides, how hiring a tour guide will save you time, money, energy, and will give you so much more information. And as you said, for me, it's fascinating to be able to take the clients, for example, to a coffee place which is 100 years old, and to teach them how to ask for a cortado, like milk and coffee mixed together, which is what the locals have, right? Or just to do the little local tricks, because when you come to a country, what you want to explore, you want to have fun, but as well you want to feel as an insider. You want to learn. So we make sure that together that's what we offer. Let me move to the next slide.
Yeah.
So we kind of touched it several times, but reasons why to visit Barcelona. I would open with the incredible architecture. And in here you have a picture of colorful, playful architecture of Antonio Gaudi, and I will talk about him in a few seconds. But other reasons why is definitely the history and culture. And I said that, and I kept in mind families, because when you're traveling with your kids, you want to make sure that somehow they are learning from that trip, right? And that trip contributes to their life and to their future. So this is a great opportunity for children to experience locally history and maybe hear about events and facts that changed history. Like, for example, in Barcelona, we have, it's the place where Christopher Columbus came after his first trip to America, which he thought it was India or somewhere in the India or China. He was not positive. And in fact, he died not knowing that he discovered a new continent. And in here, all of my clients discover super interesting when I ask them, do you know why America is called America? And it is because a later explorer, Amerigo Vespucci, realized that it was a different continent, a different land, so he named it after himself. So these little things are extremely interesting. You learn them at school, but you never remember them until the day you come and you visit Barcelona and you see the place where Christopher Columbus partied with the Catholic monarchs, with Ferdinand and Isabella, and you understand.
You never forget those monuments, especially when you experience them as a child, whether it's a monument or a significant event that took place in a wide open area. And you're right, Christopher Columbus has the monument near the port. And I think with kids, especially, when I travel with my kids and I can really sense their interests, and a guide really helps to create and bring out the interest of the child. So you can sense, like, does my child appreciate the architect? Are they interested in the different architects when we travel from place to place? Are they more into the food and the entertainment or the culture and their people? And I think it gets them wanting to explore more, whether it's picking up a book and reading more or watching a movie or a documentary. When kids are exposed to the opportunity to learn while traveling, it's so much more exciting. It's so much more authentic than textbook learning, and it gives them a real flavor, and the memories last so much longer. I mean, some of the things that I've learned on traveling and from guides and experiences, I retain it so much better because it's a memory. It's a life experience. It's something that you can then relate to because you were part of that experience. When you've actually been to that place where Columbus celebrated the return of this exploration, that if my history was great, I remember, but it was years, if I remember correctly. When he returned, it's that celebration, you feel a part of it, whether you're American or not. You just feel this sense of, wow, like this is a starting point to our country's history.
Exactly. And I agree with you that you're learning so much better and remembering things so much better than from a textbook, right? And I see the difference from my childhood, right? When maybe the traveling was not that open, and sometimes, especially at geography, I was so bad at it because you were writing to me in a textbook things that it was very hard to imagine. Whereas later in life, as I started to travel, I became an expert, to say so. So it was so easy to assimilate. And it's fascinating to hear stories of my clients, how the entire flight back and their airplane, the child could not keep its mouth shut of all of the things that he discovered and the stories that he heard and the dragons that he hunted in Barcelona. So it is a place which is extremely educational for kids and for families.
For sure. The arts, the history, the cuisine. There's so much entertainment in Barcelona.
Exactly.
On all levels, from relaxation to art, history.
I will now go a little bit through the things that you cannot miss when you visit Barcelona. And you said that you would like to make a little passage through history or through the streets of Barcelona. And I placed in here the Gothic Quarter, and it's this feeling of that we just talked until now, walking through history. Because if you look at the left side picture, you see written in bronze letters Barcino. Barcino is the name of the old colony, which is today Barcelona. Barcelona started as a Roman colony, founded 2,000 years ago by the Roman Emperor Augustus. And today, 2,000 years later, you can still find those remains. You can still find parts of the Roman wall of defense, of the towers of defense, and you can climb into a tower of defense to feel like a Roman soldier defending the city. We recovered columns from the old Roman temple, and that's where, as well as a child, as a student, you could learn about the Roman times, about their structure in their city, in their daily life. They believed in multiple gods, that it was before Christianity. So for me, it's fascinating to present that to people. And from the Roman legacy, which the Museum of History offers the possibility to go underground and walk on the Roman streets and see places where they used to make wine 2,000 years ago, because the Romans, they loved the wine, and I think we inherited that from them. You could see a place where they sold codfish, so you could go back in time for sure.
Florenta, I'm going to have to put you on the spot and say we are going to have to set up a wine tasting as a separate appearance, because Spanish wines are so amazing. So when I was in Spain, I did like 5 days of wine touring. So we went from one region to the next, and they're fascinating wines. And I don't think people stateside necessarily adventure enough into Spanish wines. So we'll have to pick some favorites and let people know of those wines if they're available in the United States, and certainly provide a list of those that maybe are only available in Spain or less available in other parts of the world. So I hope that's something we can do at a future date.
It will be my pleasure.
Awesome, thank you.
Definitely. And I will talk about it in a second, about the wine tours that we offer and the differences that you can find. And as you say, it's a hidden gem. It's a precious thing of Spain, which people are not so familiar. They all go for the French wine or for the Italian wine. And I can say that the Spanish wine is as good as the French one, but way cheaper, because the workforce is cheaper in here in Spain. So obviously that will result into the price of the wine cheaper. But as well, as I've mentioned, we have 300 days of sun. So that makes it easier for us to grow the vineyards and the wine. Moving to our next slide, this is another thing that you cannot miss. Antonio Gaudi. I'm sure you've heard about him. It is now a leading architect. Everybody studies it at the School of Architecture. But please let me tell you that when he finished the School of Architecture here in Barcelona, the teacher said, "We do not know if we give this diploma to a madman or to a genius. Only time will tell." So today I can say that he is a genius. But back then, when he was alive, it was a very, very thin line.
Florenta, remind our viewers, what was his lifetime, roughly?
Okay, so he was born in 1852, 1 hour away from Barcelona. And he moved into the city to study at the School of Architecture. And he was extremely passionate about not only architecture, but about ironwork, about ceramics, all of these little fields of architecture. And looking at the superior part, you have two of his houses, Casa Batlló and Casa Milà, which were built for wealthy people, for the bourgeoisie back in the 1900s. So the one on the right side was finished in 1905, and the one on the left in 1912. So those are houses from 100 years ago, which today when you walk on the main street, Paseo de Gracia, you're still wondering, a madman or a genius? What was in this man's head, right? So he would provide this type of work for private people, but as well, he's extremely famous for Sagrada Familia, right? Sagrada Familia, which Antonio Gaudi started in 1883. The Sagrada Familia was started 1 year before, in 1882, but the first architect resigned and Gaudi took it in when he was only 31 years old. And he worked on this temple, the Temple of the Holy Family, until the day he died in 1926, when he was 74 years old.
And I don't think a lot of people realize the amount of construction and how long it really took to build this project and how much fundraising was required. Maybe share a little bit with us.
So everybody's asking, this is the common question, when is Sagrada Familia going to be finished? Why it took so long? So what we need to understand is that Sagrada Familia was always built on donations. So it was a way of people, let's say, to pay their sins. It was the cathedral built by the people, not the cathedral, the basilica or the temple built by the people, for the people. So money were coming fairly slow during Gaudi's life. He knew he's not going to live to see it finished. And you know what? When he was asked, when are you going to finish that church? He would say, my contractor is not in a hurry. And he was referring to God. And as I've mentioned, everything was built on donations. When Gaudi died, you could expect him to have died with honor. But in fact, the day he died in 1926, he was hit by a tram when he was crossing the street. And because of his untaken care of appearance, he was confused with a homeless person. So he was just thrown into a hospital with everybody else. And a few days later, he died because of the wounds of the accident. And at the funeral, when everybody realized where he was, who he was, the entire city came to join him on its last road. But it's a little bit ironic. And after his death in 1926, the church only had what you're looking at in the picture in here, the 4 bell towers and the Nativity facade. But then, in 1936, the Spanish Civil War started, which lasted for 3 years, which drained the country. So no more money. It did more destruction than anything else. And then we had the dictatorship until 1975, the Francisco Franco, the general, which was a fascist. And of course, it was like the works were paused. Until later in 1980s, slowly it started to build up. And looking at the church is not something small. It's going to be a structure which is going to have 18 bell towers, 12 for the apostles, 4 for the evangelists, 1 for the Virgin Mary, and the tallest one is going to be dedicated to Jesus. So it's not something easy. It's not something, especially back then for the technology. Today, we're blessed. We have 3D printers. It's very easy to make advancement. And we have fairly enough money because all of the money from the tickets, they go as donations for the continuation of the building. And I'm sorry to say that our plan was to finish it. We had everything in order to finish it in 2026, when we would commemorate 100 years from the death of Antonio Gaudi. But that might not be possible because of the pandemic and because of 1 year of not receiving money.
Well, I will say, when I first saw the Sagrada in the 90s, it has the rebuilt and just the continuation of the building been fascinating. I mean, there's significant progress. So now, I mean, I'm kind of humbled that I got to see it, at different stages, and certainly it will be finished. Yes. And it looks so much more finished now than what it did. Let's not age myself, but many years ago.
We moved fairly fast in the last few years. As I said, because of the technology, because of the money, so we were advancing at the fast pace. So summing up with this, The last thing I want to mention about Antonio Gaudi, which is a must when you visit, is the fact that we have 7 UNESCO sites, so World Heritage Patrimonies of his. In Barcelona, we have 9 of them, and out of those 9, 7 are of Antonio Gaudi.
Wow, that's fascinating. He has to probably have the most UNESCO sites of any one person. Do you know? That sounds fascinating.
It is possible.
When you think about it, yeah.
Architect, it is possible. It is possible. I will check that out. Okay, that's interesting. Let's move a little bit outside of the city, because Barcelona has this other privilege of, in 45 minutes, to head out of the city to a totally different landscape with a totally different ambient and activity. And you could be in time in Barcelona for lunch. So Montserrat is the day trip you have to take. It's a must. Even if you're staying for 3 days in Barcelona.
So true. It's everyone's favorite highlight of their trip to northern Spain.
100%. And it has nature. It's a unique mountain structure. It has religion and spirituality, because on the mountain we have a Benedictine monastery, which is almost 1,000 years old. Then it's adventurous a little bit, because you could go from the bottom of the mountain up to the monastery, which is at 2,000 feet. You could go with this cable car. From the monastery, you could take a funicular and you could head to the maximum altitude, almost 5,000 feet. So you could combine religion with nature, with adventure. But the have to from Montserrat is to be inside the church and listen to the boys' choir, Escolania de Montserrat. So it's a boys' choir school, one of the oldest in Europe, together with the Vienna Boys' Choir. And almost every day, except Saturdays, they pay their tribute to the Madonna of Montserrat, to the Virgin of Montserrat at 1 o'clock. And everybody gathers there to see and to hear the angelic voices of the children.
Yeah, just its location to just have the echoes of the mountains. I have not seen the boys' choir, so when we spent our day, it wasn't timed correctly, but it's such a memorable place. And the hiking, if you're up for hiking, it's not necessary, but there's lots of opportunities to hike, and the views are just so breathtaking. It's an incredible place to see a sunrise or a sunset, and certainly the boys' choir. What time, again, remind me, does the boys' choir sing?
So it's from Monday to Friday at 1 o'clock, and then Saturday they do not sing, and on Sundays at 12 o'clock during the Mass. Mm-hmm. But if we coordinate, I'm sure we're gonna get the best out of this trip. So
absolutely.
Then another day trip I would love to talk about is to Tarragona, because it's only 1 hour and 15 minutes away from Barcelona. So if you're spending 5-6 days in the city, it's a must. Everybody believes that Barcelona was always the main city, but the truth is that during the Roman times, Tarragona was like the capital of this Iberian Peninsula. And it was a time when the Roman Emperor Augustus came and spent his summers in here, and the capital moved from Rome into this place, Tarragona. And it was very important, and that's why we will find different facilities from the Roman times, like, for example, this amphitheater. I would compare it today as a football stadium, but at a smaller pace, where back 2,000 years ago we would have gladiators fights. So imagine just stepping on the same spot where gladiators would fight, or wild beasts would be brought there to fight the gladiators. So for me, it's fascinating. And then on the bottom we have an aqueduct, which is the system the Romans used to bring fresh water into their cities from rivers nearby, and on the superior part, which today you can walk, it's where the water would flow through the channel. So that is a really fantastic experience to be able to walk on a 2,000 years old aqueduct. And there is another thing I would like to mention about Tarragona, and if you look at this picture in here, it's this event of building human towers. This is unique. You're not going to find it anywhere else. It's unique of Catalonia. It's an untouchable world heritage. So you know that sometimes you can have a cultural world heritage, right? Like the Mediterranean food, like the human towers in here, where we have different people training for the entire year to compete at a certain date. Who builds the highest human tower? So what you see here are people one on top of the other, right? Building this human tower. Normally the one that arrives at the top, which is maybe 6 years old, needs to raise its hand, and then they need to undo the tower just as nicely as they did it. Otherwise it doesn't count. And if you're in the, and sometimes when you visit Barcelona and when you visit Tarragona, you could witness this type of events. And if you're there in the middle, you feel your heart rushing, especially if you're a mother and you know that you're 6 years old, it's going to the top of it. And it's emotion. It's the thing that we bring back from our trips, isn't it? The emotions that we feel during the trip.
Wow, you're absolutely right. And it's sometimes you plan to avoid festivals because you don't want to be around crowds. And then there's opportunities where you want to just be immersed in that experience.
I personally recommend festivals or local celebrations because it gives you the taste of the culture. And that's why you're traveling, to feel differences, to see differences, to admire other people's differences. But, you know, if you're afraid a little bit of the crowds, like it happened to me on Halloween in the United States for the parade, that was an experience which maybe I don't want to repeat. You could find a safe place and just watch it. Just watch the people.
Or looking for more, you know, local, regional events where, like you said, it might be an event that's specific for a neighborhood. And so, yes, there's crowds, but it's not massive crowds. I know the celebrations of San Sebastian were a great experience. And when I was in Madrid, we celebrated the Three Kings, which was a remarkable experience. I mean, that's really... you know, maybe share that story, the differences between how Christians in Spain celebrate Christmas versus the United States. Some people might not know that.
Okay, so we tend to celebrate Christmas as well, mostly because of this globalization, okay? But in here, the day which is more important for us during the winter holiday is the Epiphany, the day of the Three Wise Men. So it's the day, in fact, when the Three Wise Men brought gifts to the baby Jesus, right? So that is the day when people in here children receive their gifts, right? And we make a huge parade where we throw candies and everybody's just trying to pick up a little bit of candies. But I'm not sure if you're mentioning to the local Catalan tradition for Christmas, which is a log that we beat up so it can put gifts. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, in addition to, yes. And you'll need to post that in the group because that'll be a good laugh for everyone. I know you did a video on that and it's worth sharing. So make sure you share that in the group.
It will be my pleasure. And yes, in here we have a different way of doing things. And all of the cultural things today, it has its roots back in the medieval times, for example, back when things were different, where we're not all of us living in the city, many people would work the field. And this log tradition, it happens back in the days when everybody would have a fire in their home, right? And they would not afford to buy gifts every Christmas for their children. So what they would do is to entertain the children somewhere around 8th, 9th, 10th of December, they would go with a family in the forest to pick up a beautiful log. And that log, let me see if I have it in here. And
If you have it nearby.
I have the big one home somewhere downstairs, but so this is the log, which is a mini log covered with a blanket, because people are taking it home, and the children are responsible to take care of it. And this red hat, it's a typical Catalan hat, which we call it barretina. So the log, you give maybe some milk, maybe some cookies until the Christmas day. On the Christmas day, the children, they start beating the log with a stick, and they sing to it, and they say, "Pop log, pop gifts." And the reason why they do so is because the parents hide under the blanket the gifts, right? So if the gifts are under the blanket and you lift up the blanket, it gives you this feeling that the log pooped the gifts. Right? So every single Christmas we do this. It's fascinating. It's a part, and a very original part of Catalonia.
I love hearing the uniquenesses of the way people celebrate in different parts of our world. And we're it's really that celebrating family, celebrating traditions and your faith, but at the same time, we go about it differently. And it's fun to kind of, sometimes what we like to do is try to adopt some other things, especially if we're visiting that country. But it is fun to get to share each other's ways of celebrating and ways to bring people together.
Definitely. After all, we all want the same thing. We want the proximity of our family, and we get it one way or another. And another great way to get people together, it's sharing some wine, for example. So from Barcelona as well, you can take several wine tours. You could do wine pairing. You could do you could visit a boutique winery and have lunch in the middle of the vineyards. So it's another experience which you could enjoy in Barcelona. And believe me, people absolutely love it. And it's incredible how much they open to each other and to the culture. And as well, if they get to know the owner of the winery, if it's a smaller one, that happens very often. Or we can have fun in bigger wineries when you're driving underground for like 10, 15 minutes in a train in places built decades ago to keep a stable temperature for the wines. So this is another opportunity you would get if you would visit this area in the city. How are we doing with time?
Take as much as you'd like. Okay. It's fascinating.
Because I want to know how long I can go with explanations, especially now.
Yeah, no, you're doing great. Paella, my favorite.
So I love food. I know you. I'm sure you know food. You love food, right?
And yes, my parents did share with me, Florenta. They said, "How does she keep that figure?" Because they did share that you have quite the appetite. The love of food, myself included.
I love my food, definitely. I think the reason why I'm keeping the figure is the fact that as a tour guide, you end up walking 10 miles a day easily.
Absolutely. Play hard, work hard, play hard, right?
Exactly. And I could not resist. I mean, the variety of food we have in here. And, it's very healthy. It's not the type of food that you would get really fat from or have health issues. The Mediterranean diet, it's the one that the doctor recommends, after all. So we have very fresh produce. And here you will find the market in absolutely any neighborhood. And I think a client of mine mentioned how small our fridges are, right? Because we go shopping maybe every 2-3 days. We just get what we're eating on those days, and then we continue like this. We keep on going for fresh produce because it's available everywhere.
And where I live and where most people in America live, you go to one grocery store, a massive grocery store. But even to this day, a lot of European countries, and I know, when I traveled in Europe and when I studied abroad and lived there for an extended period of time, I mean, I got my dairy from one little venue, and then my pastries from another, and your poultries will be from the butcher. Your fish was from the fish market, and even some of the produce, it was, some people focus more on vegetables and others more on fruit, and you just carried a bag, and you, it was really, and you felt more engaged with the selection of choosing your foods. And I agree, it naturally just encourages you to eat more healthy. You don't find a lot of processed foods in Spain. It's more healthy, organic, and authentic spices and other things.
So the markets are sacred for us. We just love going there, and it's beautiful because you can create a relationship with the person selling as well. But indeed, I get my fruits from one part. I make sure that they are local. They don't bring it from abroad. They don't need to fly in things that we can produce in here. So that's another attention to detail that I can say that Europeans have. I know my croissants. I know where to go and get them. I go at that 100 years old coffee shop to get my coffee. So we're very specific. And, you know, those are the things that I love to share with my clients. I want to take them to the market. I want to show them, look, this is the gentleman that I'm buying from. And maybe if you're not in a hotel, but you're in an apartment, you could prepare your own food, or you could just taste something there in the market. A paper cone of Iberian ham, one of the best in the world, or manchego cheese, definitely.
Oh, I love manchego cheese. But you're right, like no paella is created equal. And there's probably stories behind recipes and what you put in it, and even probably the time of the year, there's different recipes.
Well, paella, it comes from Valencia more. It originated there, but you would be surprised to know that in Valencia they put rabbit in it and chicken in it. So in here in Spain, we tend to see it more of seafood paella. But if you're heading more towards inland, you will definitely get more meat into it. So it depends as well on the produce that you have access to it to be fresh. And in the picture in here that you have on the right side, it's not exactly a paella. It's something local, which is absolutely delicious. It's a type of paella which, instead of the rice, has short noodles. When you're gonna visit, I'll have to let you try it, because my clients, some of them, they choose it over paella afterwards. And I love as well the diversity of food in here. For example, on the right side, I'm sure you're familiar with them, the slice of bread with something delicious on top, held together by the toothpick. That's typical of north of Spain and San Sebastian. The pinchos.
The tapas, yes.
The pinchos are those little bites, and then the tapas are small plates to share. Like, for example, patatas bravas in here, or the typical Catalan food, bread with rubbed tomatoes and olive oil. Simple, but yet delicious.
And a lot of restaurants will just have them up at the bar, and you just pick and choose, and it's a lot of fun. I remember that was kind of a new experience for me, and I remember it vividly, just saying, okay, how long has that been sitting? And you don't realize how many people are eating, and it's servings, and so you get used to it. But it's really, they have all these foods lined up, and you can pick them, and it's kind of on an honor system. I think in a lot of places, the bartender just, you know, rings you up when it's time to go.
Food for us is part of the culture, 100%. Lunch for us, it's a possibility to connect with a family. So it's a ritual. In very little cases, you're going to see the Spaniards or a Catalan eating a sandwich in front of the computer. It's a sacred time that you take off an hour, and you go out and you have lunch maybe with your wife or the business partner and a glass of wine. And the majority of the restaurants, they offer this system for the working people, where in an hour they make sure they provide fresh cooked food, the first and the second and dessert, in a fixed price. So they know how to take advantage of this, and you will find delicious food, fresh food in every restaurant. Definitely. Let me move on. I think we discussed this before, the importance of private tours and why you should choose one over the big crowded tours. And I'm positive that especially today, after this pandemic, people will search more for smaller groups. They will avoid the crowds. They will avoid the agglomerations, and it's ideal to do it with a professional, with an expert in the situation, because it can save you time, money. They could cater to your interests. Then it's safe, and
right. It's not only the social distancing, but it's also that ability. If you're on a big tour, you don't have any say in terms of when things start, when they finish. I mean, you're really on somebody else's schedule, whereas a private tour is truly created for you and what you have in mind and for your style of movement as well as your interests.
100%, and you can decide that you want to spend more time on a certain subject or in a certain place, or maybe that now you just feel the need to sit down and have a coffee and just relax for a second and then continue, or you want to ask questions. For me as a traveler, this is essential. I mean, I want to know things. I want to know from an expert's point of view, and I want to have the possibility to ask questions. So I consider that is very important. As well as avoiding the tourist traps. You don't want to end up in a place where the company gets commission, but the food is not as good as it should be, which for me, and I'm sure that for you as well, is essential for the client to enjoy first. And then if there's some benefits, amazing. If not, I'm okay with that. It's more important the value that I bring to my client.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you're there to experience everything that there is to offer. But obviously, whether it's a day, 3, 4 days, you're still limited on what you can experience. So with a tour, you really don't get stuck in those tourist traps from restaurants that appear busy, but they're not really authentic. And just knowing your way around, I mean, being able to be guided and directed, and by all means, maybe you have 2 days of touring and another day of leisure where you're by yourself. I always recommend that people at least do a tour their first full day in any city, because it allows you to learn the city in a quick period of time and utilize that guide to really help finesse how you're going to spend your day of leisure.
Definitely. That is why we tend to recommend things for the rest of the stay. But in my opinion, a great way to discover the city is to get lost as well.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Florenta, it was so great getting to see you again, not in person, but we will make that happen. And you're always a great resource for us. We love working with you. Hands down, we have no worries when we send our clients to Barcelona, because we know that they're in very good hands. So thanks again. And if anyone is watching in the replay and you have any questions about Barcelona, please leave those comments and we'll follow up and give you a reply. And if we need Florenta's guidance, of course, we'll have Florenta respond as well. So staying up later, I know we're in very different time zones, so I appreciate that you made time for us today, Florenta. Thanks again. And thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, Angie. Have a great day, and thank you for the opportunity.